HarperCollins presents The Good, the Bad and the Rugby Unleashed. Written and read by Alex Payne,
James Haskell
and Mike Tindall. The Good. Chapter 1. In the beginning. I had a mental spreadsheet mapping out my life until I was 65. I'd turn up every Saturday and present rugby. I'd say, "Hello, how are you?" Ask the guests a few questions, then throw to the game, and after the game I'd say, "Thanks for watching, see you next week, goodbye." So when Sky nudged me out of the door in 2018, it absolutely skittled me. I'd spent 20 years very much working for the man. I was literally branded. My Twitter handle was @SkySportsAlexP, and my parents would call me Sky Sports Alex Payne, insinuating that not only was that job my whole identity, but also that I'd grown too big for my boots. But now, when I walked into a room, I was no longer that guy who had the supposedly dream job presenting on Sky. I had no idea who or what I was meant to be anymore. I was steeped in rugby, and I'd got to know quite a few people in the game, but nothing had come up rugby-wise in the couple of months after I left. I was starting to think, what am I going to do? Then I got a call that would lead to my life being turned on its head. The call was from an Irish digital company called Joe Media, who wanted me to be part of a rugby podcast they were planning to set up. When I met them, their idea was still just a sketch, but they were very keen and open to ideas. So when they started going through the kinds of people they were after for the podcast, all great players who were coming towards the end of their careers, but not the sort of big personalities who could carry a weekly show, I raised an eyebrow and said, I'd get James Haskell, because he's the noisiest person in the sport, leads a mad life, knows everyone, tells very funny stories, and takes his work seriously. He will take you to places those other people can't reach. The other person I had in mind was Mike Tindall, who ticked a lot of boxes. Not only was he a bona fide legend of the sport, having won the World Cup with England in 2003, when I was still a work experience kid at Sky, but he also led an extraordinary life and knew lots of famous and interesting people, having married into the royal family in 2011. We'd also worked together at Sky, and we had a couple of mutual friends, so he made a lot of sense. It goes without saying that Hask and Tins are competitive, because they've played rugby at the very highest level, but I also had a burning desire to succeed in my own quiet way. Sky Sports has evolved over the years, so that nowadays there are more personality-led productions. But when I started at Sky over 20 years ago, most of their presenters were fairly identikit. We were all dressed the same in Sky-branded gear, and they trained us to be heard, although not too much, and not really seen. Our opinions counted for nothing. We were there to ask questions and bring the best out of everybody else. Podcasts have been around a while at this stage, although they were nowhere near as big as they are now. But if I was going to do this podcast, I wanted it to be the best in the business. And I didn't think that would be the case unless Hask and Tins came on board with me. While Tins was still thinking about whether he wanted to be involved or not, Joe Media suddenly decided they wanted to record the first show in autumn 2018. So the first ever House of Rugby, as it was called then, was me, Hask, and former England Sevens captain Rob Vickerman, who also had a career as a pundit and commentator. Former England lock Nick Kennedy was the third man in episode 2, before Tins made his first appearance in episode 4. Tins had a lot of other things going on, including waving from palace balconies, so didn't really need the podcast, but I think he was looking for something regular to get stuck into. And while Tins and Hask weren't great mates, they obviously knew and had a huge amount of respect for each other. They were two alpha males, so I think there was an element of eyeing each other up and thinking, yeah, I reckon the two of us could make this work. There was a bit of chopping and changing in those early days, but once Tins realised how much fun it was to work with Hask, he went all in. It wasn't just the 2 hours recording the podcast that was fun, it was the preamble, which is still the case today. The other day, we recorded an episode of our spin-off show, The Lock-In. While Tins and I were waiting for Hask to turn up, we engaged in the usual idle chat about our week, wives, kids, other work. But when Hask finally came bundling into the studio, drama ensued. He'd come straight from jury service in North London, where he'd fought with the parking attendant, fought with the clerk of the court, and been sworn out by a pensioner who thought he was trying to hog proceedings. In one morning, he'd hoovered up more ridiculous stories than most of us accrue in a year. I'm sure people wonder why Tins would want to get mixed up with such a dramatic character, given his royal connections. But you have to remember that members of the royal family are accustomed to dealing with drama on a grand scale, and Tins has dug his own grave on a few occasions. So while Tins is naturally quite laid back, and he might occasionally roll his eyes at Hask's antics, he can
Sample complete. Ready to continue?